Hey everybody, this is Perch. Have mail here. How do manga characters get away with murder? It says, "Hello, manga by Perch." Oh, thanks. A few things. First of all, you just answered a mail from this address, so I'll be using this one from now on. Honestly, the mails just get answered from whatever I pull up at the time, and it's not that fancy. Second, the bit about calling you nicknames based on current public figures have gotten old, especially since some of the figures I used have gotten slimed since I sent you emails with nicknames based on their names. Okay, fair enough. Third, I've seen you defend the modern US comic practice of heroes not killing under any circumstance, but that seems to be not a norm at all in manga. Plenty of action manga, both shonen and show, have protagonists who kill several of their enemies and are portrayed as ideal heroes, not just seinen. How are these characters still perceived as heroic by manga fandom around the world while Marvel DC heroes who do the same are perceived as unheroic? Is it just a relative lack of unconditional, simple moral norms in Eastern culture? Or is it something specific to the fandoms that developed due to authoritarian constraints of US comics never ending? I'd love to hear your take on this. All right, there's a lot there. So they used a lot of fancy words that some of you may not be familiar with unless you're deeply steeped in manga. But the basic summary is, hey, how come you can have a heroic manga where characters are, basically revered and looked up to and, popular, um, and they still have the ideals of being clearly a hero. So, for example, My Hero Academia, you have All Might, and All Might is seen as a Superman, Captain America kind of ideologue, a hero with kind of a hero's hero, somebody who always does the right thing, also murders people from time to time. If the villain's being bad, he stopped the villain. Whereas in the U.S., or at least most of the superhero comics you read that are Marvel or DC comics, the idea of Superman or Batman killing is unthinkable, to the point of absurdity sometimes. Like, the Batman hasn't killed the Joker, even though clearly Batman should kill the Joker at this point. Or, from a cost benefit analysis, if you hired a consultant to come in, you'd say, I understand the whole moral code and everything else, but by letting the Joker live, and by the fact that him being held and incarcerated successfully has a point zero chance of success, he is definitely going to kill innocent people in the future. So therefore, capital punishment or death makes sense. You could do that analogy that analysis all day long. Um, the simple reason why in manga this is accepted and in the US it's not is really because manga set the standard for that, at the beginning. Keep in mind a lot of US comics and superheroes, yeah, that we're reading today, a lot of them had their origins in the 60s. And it was a different time, it was a more innocent time. You didn't have this idea of, gray moral code and everything else. You didn't have Tom King back there with Jack Kirby making comics. And so, they stuck to those ideals. If you go look at manga from the 60s and 70s, if you go look at very old manga, you'll see actually very similar ideals. Not exactly the same because there are cultural differences. We'll get to that in a minute. But you'll see a similar kind of, uh, heroes don't kill kind of, methodology. The US certainly experimented with, no, heroes do kill. And you saw this in the kind of 80s with 70s, 80s with the Punisher and characters like that. And in the 90s, you got to see like the gritty era where, characters are adding shoulder pads and spikes and, murdering a bitch, as they say in the comics. But the problem is the foundation had already been laid of, a hero's hero. If you're talking about the Fantastic Four or Superman or, Captain America or even Batman, the moral code became we're better than them. It just became the philosophy that comics were based off of. Manga didn't have that problem. First of all, you have manga that's ending. So and that brings up a whole other big point. The problem with heroes who kill is over time, invariably, you're going to get to a point of, the hero went too far. The hero is killing people they shouldn't have. I mean, I don't know if many of you remember there was a storyline where the Punisher went crazy and he was killing off jaywalkers and things. I mean, there's you run out enough time the comic eventually has to deal with the idea the hero is killing people. And what if the hero kills somebody who's actually innocent? And does that make them a hero anymore? You have to start answering some of those questions. Well, manga has a definitive start and end. It doesn't go on indefinitely. The before mentioned My Hero Academia is has it ended at this point? It is ending. If it hasn't ended already, I think it ended, right? I'm behind on My Hero Academia. I got to the final battle and with Shigaraki, and that's where I stepped out, and I need to conclude that. I didn't see how it wrapped up. Anyway, or maybe it's still wrapping up. I don't know what I'm talking about. But my point is, it ends, and so when it ends, it allows you to do things and be a little bit more kind of free with where the comic goes. Also, the culture. Yeah, the culture is different. I think there's a desire in the US to do a little bit of the who really is guilty and is there a reason behind some of this activity that makes killing off villains trickier. In Japan, you have a much clearer idea of heroes and villains. It's interesting because I'm continuing to go back to My Hero Academia. We could do the same thing with One Punch Man or yeah, any number of comics. But My Hero Academia, they'll do things like, do the villains have a point, and is the government corrupt? Wait, but they play with those topics a little bit. But villains are still villains. You can have sympathetic villains, but the villain is still clearly a villain. And generally speaking, the villains also seem to accept their fate a lot of the time. Where the villains you saw this with a lot of characters in numerous manga where the villain is doing horrible things, very serial killer level things. And the villain's like, I always knew I'd get caught one day because I'm evil. Like there's a self recognition there that makes the murder of those characters easier. The funny thing is, I don't think that death is necessary for a lot of these comics. And you said earlier that I defended it. It's not, it's less that I'm defending the character's killing. It's more that once you undo that, uh, once you break that, then you've taken a step in the character you can't easily walk back. So if you have Superman, and Superman's history since, forever, since character inception has been that he doesn't kill and that he finds another way and everything else, that's now core to the character's personality. If one day a writer comes in, it's like, fuck it, Superman's killing now. At that point, you're committed to that bit. Superman is going to murder people. Superman, at that point, you can't have Superman, you know, take the transition to, well, I'll put it this way. I'll use a different example. Let's say you do a Batman storyline where for a year, Batman is like struggling, trying to figure out how to defeat a certain villain. Finally comes to the conclusion, I've got to kill this guy. Like murder is what's the Gotham is doomed if I don't murder this guy. At that point, for every Batman story going forward, Batman looks like an idiot if he like tries to put the genie back in the bottle and doesn't kill people. Like you can't say like, here's a big threat and I've got to kill this person, and then Batman kills them, and then Batman goes up against the Joker. It's like, nope, Batman doesn't kill. It's like, at this point, the Joker's body count is it's huge, right? It's way bigger than that girl who slept with 100 guys in a single day. It's he's got a big body count. And same thing with Mr. Freeze and the Riddler and the Penguin. Like a lot of these characters have, death tolls that they're directly responsible for in the thousands, if not tens of thousands. I mean, we've seen some villains like, I'm gonna just blow up half the city. I mean, like you're talking like 100,000 people there. And at that point, if the character has crossed the line before to kill them, the hero just looks like a fool if they don't. And so, I mean, you could call this a trap. It's kind of just something that American comics have gotten themselves into, but it's where American comics are. That's their model. And so that's why you see independent companies, you see, comics, you see like Invincible. Invincible killed people. They'd have little storylines where Invincible's like, I don't know, maybe it's not good to kill people. Meanwhile, I'm going to just fly through this guy at full speed and just splatter his guts everywhere. I mean, so, you're if you set that tone in your universe from the beginning, it's fine. But once you've established that the hero is not going to kill, then it's just hard to undo it. So that's basically my answer. I guess my question back for you and all of you is, should heroes kill? Do heroes need to kill? Is a comic unrealistic if heroes do not kill? This was a kind of a standard that was established during the '60s, but a lot was different back then, just in terms of general cultural sensibilities. So where are we now? What do you say? Do you need your heroes to kill, or you prefer they don't kill? And keep in mind, I'm talking new characters, new heroes. I'm not talking. I still think, and I suspect most of the people here would agree, but like you can't. Captain America. Now, by the way, Captain America's a fascinating example to me because Captain America's like heroes don't kill. Yeah, except in World War II, I think you killed a bunch of people, right? Like, I I don't know. The moral code does seem strange for a few of these characters who, and plus, by the way, as long as I'm on the subject, if Batman is like suspending, like, well, you take somebody like innocent and cheerful like Spider-Man. Spider-Man is taking criminals, tying them upside down in webbing that is going to last an hour. Some of those criminals died in that, like, to choke to death, all the blood rushed to their head and they died, like they're unable to move, had a stroke inside that webbing. I mean, like, there's no way that all the characters that Spider-Man has apprehended survived that apprehension. Or if he's knocking them off a building, it's like, okay, we're gonna have a permanent spinal injury that is gonna cripple this person for life, but they're alive, right? I don't know. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe, and thanks for listening.